The Chinese population decreased by over 2 million to around 1.41 billion in 2023. And China is no longer the most populated country, as India recently overtook it. However, the most interesting fact about the Chinese population is that over 90% of its massive population lives on the east coast of the country. But why do almost all Chinese live here, and nearly nobody lives in the country's western regions? The answer may seem simple, but after deep research, it's more profound than one can imagine. Throughout history, migration has shaped the settlement patterns of populations. The story of Chinese migration dates back to the ancient Qing dynasty, 221 to 207 BC, a time marked by both voluntary movements driven by war, famine, and population growth, as well as systematic immigration initiatives orchestrated by the government for political, military, or economic motives. This intertwining of voluntary and planned migrations reveals the compelling and often dramatic saga of the Chinese people seeking new horizons and opportunities. The remarkable journey of Chinese culture and the spread of the Chinese people through history is a captivating saga. Chinese culture is thought to have blossomed in the Loess regions, where agriculture thrived. As time passed, society expanded east and south, taking advantage of ideal lands for intensive farming, which became a defining aspect of Chinese life. This expansion not only involved the movement of the Chinese people, but also the assimilation of diverse ethnic groups into Chinese culture. However, expansion towards the north and west was impeded by competition from nomadic tribes and other agriculturalists, limiting the spread of people, culture, and agriculture to the frontier fringes. Nevertheless, in the Korean valleys, Chinese rice agriculture was adopted, and refined techniques were passed on to the Japanese. The ancient practice of irrigated rice agriculture in China played a crucial role in shaping the culture and societal structure of the region. The reliance on human labor of agricultural activities, as opposed to animal labor, led to densely populated areas characterized by solid familial ties and an emphasis on childbearing. The necessity for farmland suitable for planting and harvesting limited the mobility of families, while the dependence on specific crop cycles made the migration to regions with insufficient rainfall or early cold weather impractical, as it posed the risk of famine. The expansion of Chinese agriculture thrived in favorable conditions, particularly in the southern regions, seamlessly integrating with the local environment. It is noteworthy that no land fully assimilated into Chinese civilization was ever wholly lost, revealing the resilience and widespread influence of Chinese culture. However, expansion to the northern and western territories was impeded by challenging environments and confrontations with indigenous populations. Although physical barriers such as the Great Wall were constructed to deter invasions, they ultimately proved ineffective. In times of internal turmoil, external groups like the Khitan Tartars, Jurchen, Mongols, and Manchus established control, each governing China at various periods from 907 to 1912. Despite their authority, these conquerors did not fully adopt Chinese customs and traditions. Although they admired Chinese literary and artistic accomplishments, they held disdain for the sedentary agriculture lifestyle. The Chinese elite had to yield to these rulers, but complete cultural assimilation was considered inconceivable. Away from major urban centers and military strongholds, the lives of ordinary citizens remained essentially unchanged, with conquerors occupying sparse military and administrative positions. The conquerors remained loyal to their original territories, relying on them for support. There were some intermingling, including concubinage and intermarriage. The conquerors and the Chinese largely upheld distinct identities. Chinese settlers often migrated to the peripheries as colonists to provide sustenance for garrisons or engaged in trade, with some being integrated into military roles. Over time, certain Chinese individuals assimilated into frontier populations, and some individuals from peripheral cultures became Chinese. Nonetheless, the frontiers remained distinctive, and until the 17th century, few Chinese inhabited areas outside what is presently recognized as China proper. The 19th century proved to be a challenging period for the Qing dynasty, whose rule from 1644 to 1911 began with great promise. Originally, the Qing rulers, a Manchu minority from the northeast, extended Chinese territories, including advanced farming techniques, new varieties of rice, and crops such as peanuts and corn from the Americas. These innovations alleviated the impact of natural disasters, ensuring food security and spurring population growth. However, the surge in population, reaching 430 million by the mid-1800s, placed immense strain on the nation's resources. However, several factors precluded the population from moving westward to the newly conquered lands. The demographic boom led to significant pressures, particularly on the farming population. Land scarcity, compounding by the traditional division of land among sons and the burdens of tenant farming, made life increasingly precarious for many. Corruption among landlords and officials further exacerbated these challenges as they enriched themselves at the expense of the populace, contributing to the weakening of the state's grip on the land. The social fabric of China unraveled under these pressures, culminating in a series of impactful rebellions driven by poverty, famine, and resentment against the king. Notable uprisings including the Taiping Rebellion, with its radical vision of a new world, and the Boxer Rebellion, aimed at expelling foreign influence. Each rebellion inflicted significant damage, leaving deep scars on the regions affected, further eroding the king's authority over the empire. By the end of the century, the once proud Qing dynasty was a mere shadow of its former self, grappling with internal strife and external pressures. In the initial 6 years of communist rule, there was minimal official migration sponsored by the government. This can be attributed to the prolonged process of bringing the Northwest and Inner Mongolia under control, as well as the extensive disruption of China's transport system during the Civil War. It wasn't until 1953, with the initiation of economic planning, that the Communist Party would outline specific economic development goals. According to a Chinese source, the number of people migrating within mainland China from the establishment of the communist state to 1955 was less than 600,000. Migration to the Northwest and Inner Mongolia during the period was even lower, likely less than 100,000. Only about 39,600 Chinese migrants were recorded to have gone to these areas in 1955, the only year for which figures are available before 1956. Initially, only individuals with the necessary skills were relocated, but by 1954, it seems that many Chinese migrated independently or were directed by authorities in their home provinces, despite the limited capacity of the borderland to absorb new inhabitants at that time. However, after the 1980s, China's economy skyrocketed. In 2023, the gross domestic product of China amounted to around 17.7 trillion US dollars. But the miracle was only possible due to the development of the eastern regions and the coastline, as thousands of plants and a myriad of ports were built to export the goods. Thus, unsurprisingly, the absolute majority of the population wants to stay in these regions. The disparity between the areas is shocking. The western part of China, which includes 12 provinces and autonomous regions, made up 21.4% of the national gross domestic product in 2022, a significant increase from 19.6% in 2012. This revelation was delivered by NDRC Vice Chairman Zhao Chenjin to the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. Over the period, the gap of the GDP per capita between the eastern and western regions decreased from 1.87 to 1.64, signifying improved access to essential public services, such as education and healthcare. Despite these advancements, the rapid economic growth in the western region has decelerated, leading to a widening economic disparity with the eastern areas. Research and development funded in the West is only half of that in the East, and the unequal distribution of public social services is becoming increasingly apparent. Disconcertingly, some parts of the northern region, particularly the northeastern provinces, are experiencing sluggish economic growth, falling below the national average. The aging population and low per capita disposable income in less developed areas further compound the issue. Shockingly, Gansu province in western China had the lowest GDP per capita at 45,000 yuan, around $6,200 in 2022, less than a quarter of that in Beijing, the region with the highest. In addition, there has been significant immigration of young people from border areas, such as those in the southwestern region bordering Myanmar and the northeastern region bordering North Korea, resulting in depopulation in many villages. But that's not all. The issue of overpopulation in the eastern regions of China is a significant concern due to the ongoing migration of China's youth from rural areas to the larger cities. This trend poses a serious risk as it results in a more pronounced concentration of the working-age population in urban areas. For instance, as of 2020, the percentage of the population aged 15 to 59 in China as a whole was 63.4%. In contrast, in cities such as Shenzhen and Guangzhou, which are vital manufacturing centers, this figure stood at 79.6% and 74.7% respectively. These numbers represent an 11 to 16% increase compared to the national average, highlighting the disparity in the population distribution between urban and rural areas. So after all the historical, economic, and political reasons, it's not surprising that over 90% of the Chinese population lives in the eastern parts of the country. However, now the question is whether China can reverse this trend and manage to attract more citizens into western regions. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and feel free to share your opinion on the topic in the comments section below.